Comrades, hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Working Class Revolt, revolutionary, working class, anti-imperialist analysis. I'm here with my always good co-host, labor organizer, union organizer. Can't say labor too much. That's a bourgeois party over there. Brother David Fox. How are you today, Dave, brother?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm going good. I've been a flat-out week out of organising, obviously. We're looking actually probably, I can't mention any companies at the moment, but we're looking to further take industrial action as well.
Right on, man. And we're joined today with a returning guest co-host. And we got a little bit of announcement, hopefully maybe a permanent co-host from here on, maybe. We'll see. Keaton Mansfield. How are you today, brother?
Oh, I'm just living the dream, Dave Dust. I'm glad to be on again. It's a great time.
Right on. So I guess we'll just get right into it. We'll start with labor updates. I'll start with myself. I'm getting into my new job, long shift hours, dealing with the politics, meeting the workers, transitioning from over the road to local. And, you know, it's a good transition, and then dealing with family life and all of that. As far as issues, probably one of the big, I'll probably deal with this I'll probably deal with this in the news updates, but a lot of people's stimulus hit and the economy's kind of weird right now. You know, it was a big help for me and my family, but a lot of like items have gone up in inflation all of a sudden, and certain jobs are like way overtime, and but there's it's interesting. It's an interesting effect. And I know this recent stimulus, I talked about it last week. I think children got a little bit more than they usually did in the last paychecks, and I guess I'll just re-mention it. The left was trying to really sell it. The so-called left, the liberals, were really trying to sell this recent stimulus as one of the best things that ever happened. Bernie Sanders, Democracy Now! Were saying that this bill in the United States lifted 50% of children out of poverty for this year, temporarily. And I'm just thinking to myself, a few $1,000s can lift children out of poverty, but we're spending all these monies on these wars. And this can be done instant, permanently, anytime. And they prefer to keep children in poverty. And that just makes me angry. Brother Fox, how are things over there in Australia?
Well, yeah, things have been going on quite, actually not so dissimilar to what's happening in the US. We've actually, during the week, there was rallies organised by living income for everybody, otherwise known as LIFE, and the Australian Unemployed Workers Union, backed up by other respected progressive groups around social security centres. Because here in Australia, we had JobKeeper, where business could not get the overturn in profit. A certain percentage they can actually apply to the federal government for JobKeepers, so they can pay for wages at the time to keep things going. But obviously, before Christmas, the JobKeeper allowance decreased, and it's looked like coming to an end very soon, which will still put a lot of people back under the poverty line here in Australia. We're still trying to actually come through the other side of this and people back into work, and a lot of businesses were suffered heavily through the whole COVID-19. Mainly small, mostly in the retail sector, hospitality, service sector, more so, but also there's been various others. So the battle is to kind of keep that going and to increase it, and that includes the job seeker, which is like another form of the social security, which actually, yeah. So that was certainly a big one. It's certainly affecting hundreds of thousands of workers here in this country that obviously needed that JobKeeper to help them exist during this very trying time.
Comrade Keaton.
Well, it's been raining like all get out around here, so it's put all the farmers behind. I know you were saying that children mentioned the stimulus are supposed to be getting more and more money. Well, where's my goddamn money? I haven't got a check in the mail from Mr. Biden.
I hear you, brother.
I tell you what, if I didn't know better, I might become a dirty communist or something. But in seriousness, there's so many people going unemployed around here. We've got a massive issue as of late with layoffs, which I think I spoke about last time, but there's the hog plant out here, as well as the Bun coffee machine plant. A lot of people have lost their jobs. There's been rollbacks because of pandemic and the ensuing absolute failure to deal with it. People are really feeling it, and it's at least my area is kind of starting to become a hotbed, whatever you want to consider it, for radicalization. People are realizing things aren't right, and it's been trying to be there to give an answer and give a solution.
Wow. Well, a lot going on. We got Smithfield's right up the road from me. I would deliver. One time I delivered shelving there. It's an interesting situation. I believe they were trying to unionize at one point. So I guess we'll get right into the any further discussion on labor updates or responses, Comrade Fox?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of other places under threat. Just want to mention Keppel Prince. It's a major engineering manufacturing company based in Portland in southwest Victoria on the coast there. It's a deep harbour port, but Keppel Prince actually manufacture a lot of wind turbines for their renewable energy sector. But they are unable to achieve any contracts because they're mainly through the federal government to a certain degree, is looking to actually have an overseas provider provide all the wind turbines instead. And these wind turbines they manufacture are high quality and very manufactured well. The thing is, now they just think, no, we'll go to a cheaper source. Let's put to at least a few hundred jobs under threat there as well. And Portland it's a coastal port city there in southwest Victoria, and that affects. They've also they've managed to have a olive leaf given to the Portland aluminium smelter because that was on a risk of on shaky ground as well. And if that closed down, that would just be any closure is devastating to a town. And this is just the end result of neoliberal capitalist politics, leaving working class communities behind once again.
Looks like we got a direct question from Itzla X, a regular of the show. Which state is Keaton based off of?
I'm based out of the great state of Illinois.
Right on, brother. Well, a lot of people. I live in North Carolina. I've been here since I was 5 years old. I was basically raised Southerner, but I'm originally from upstate New York. And when you tell them you're from you tell them you're from New York, they think the city, and that's basically a whole different country compared to upstate. I'm sure you get that a lot with Illinois. I'm sure you're from Chicago, right?
Yes. My goodness, it's people don't realize the massive divide within states between a city and rural communities. But I'm proud to be where I'm from. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
Right on. I think we'll get right into the news section today. One of the biggest stories that people are hearing in the news recently is there was an attack. There was a recent shooting. There was a gunman who I believe may have had white supremacist ties, who shot up a business, a massage parlor, and shot 8 people, majority women, majority Asian folks. And it's absolutely sad. It's disgusting. And it really exposes the level of xenophobia in this country. And it's not like it started with Trump. This has been a long-term thing, going back to the first laws against immigration was the Chinese Exclusion Act. And then there's been horrible acts of violence, race riots against Asian people, living within the United States. And then you got the anti-Asian rhetoric of both parties, of both Republicans. You got Trump calling this the China virus, calling it the Kung flu. But then you got people saying, "Oh, China is the worst, is worse imperialist than the U.S. and they're committing genocide over there, and Vietnam isn't as socialist as fucking Northern Europe is." All this kind of bullshit, racism, the stereotype of the Asian despot, Asian tyranny, as if the West can only have democracy and the West is the arbiter of human rights. And constantly, in the liberal media, New York Times, just constant, outright racist attacks on Asian anti-imperialist governments. Comrade Mansfield.
Well, it's like you said, this isn't something that's new to the U.S. I mean, this has been a constant theme, even going so far as when talking about China, when they brought up I saw an article bringing up the response to COVID, and they brought Confucianism into it. It's this idea that Asian countries, especially China, it's like it's still tied to these 2,000-year-old, even more than that for Confucianism ideas. I mean, it'd be this. It would be as outrageous if CGTN said that part of the reason that Europe has failed so horribly to deal with COVID is because of the divine right of kings. I mean, it's just this very sort of Orientalist approach to things, and it strikes me as interesting that in many headlines, you see this guy shot up a spa is mentioned before the attacks on people. It shows where the priority of property, businesses, capital come before, human lives, especially the lives of minorities.
Comrade Fox?
Well, just actually flying off of that, we mentioned China. Yesterday's paper in the Melbourne Age, called the Saturday Age, mines and farms target of foreign spies, says ASIO. ASIO is the equivalent to your CIA. And so basically, China is now spying on our farms. I don't know what they'll be spying on, but yes, that's right, folks. China is spying on our farms. They must be spying on what wheat's grown, what trees are grown, what stock is, you generally, it couldn't get any dumber, but at the same time, it will. I really want to have a laugh about this, but this just comes to show you this whole anti-China rhetoric coming through. If it's a case about national sovereignty, national security reasons, there are definitely reasons, but they're something to take serious, but to actually go ahead and do this, this is just lowering the bar further. I expect that from the Murdoch people to say that, but that's just, that was lowering the bar further. And it just comes to show you, and exactly what I just correctly said in the comments just there, Cold War against China is intensifying. And it's basically, if something goes wrong in our own respective countries, I will blame China. Something else, China, this. And it even got ridiculous to the point too, where SBS, which is one of the government-provided media channels, along with the ABC here, actually barred China Global Television Networks, CGTN, any of its news sources from there as well. And it's obviously they want to actually ban anything that, any information about China on their side of things, that we're just going to have this complete narrow view. This is China, the bad, evil society, and anything you do, they will take you away and do things. And it's just how far this is going is actually beyond the joke now. And there's actually in our media, there's no proper critical analysis, no actual unbiased reporting. It's all the pro-imperialist one-way viewing of China. And if anyone speaks differently, then automatically you're all of a sudden an agent for China, or and it's got various similarities to the early Cold War. Well, you must be a Russian agent or a Soviet agent if you speak in favour. Yeah.
I think this is an important topic to speak on. I think there was also an elderly couple attacked, an Asian elderly couple attacked. I think just recently, within the last few years or months, there was an Asian doctor that was attacked on a plane. And escorted out, something to do with like terrorism or something. But it's absolutely crazy. And that doctor who was attacked on that plane was this gets into the theme of the show, country commies. That doctor that was attacked on that plane was obvious discrimination. Was a doctor in a rural community, I think in Kentucky, and in a lot of rural communities, the majority of the doctors are Asian immigrants and other immigrants, and why that is that you'd have to get into the concept of brain drain, which is an imperialist practice where instead of investing in education in the United States, they will siphon off publicly educated people from other countries and import them, and because they manipulate the wages and other things, it's a better standard of living. So it both hurts that country, denies them doctors, which they train, and denies people being trained here. And it all benefits the imperialist system. It has nothing to do with Asian people coming here taking our jobs. We don't need them. Well, that Asian doctor was a respected person in his community and was providing basic services to people that wouldn't have it otherwise. And I mean, there's a lot to speak on this. Comrade Mansfield, anything to add to the conversation?
Yeah, we've got a town about maybe 45 minutes north of where I am. It's not a big town, but I mean, it's a predominantly Black and Central American town. And, it's because the workforce is cheaper. You can pull in people who aren't familiar with the language, aren't familiar with the legal system. And we, obviously already understand how this works. But one of the saddest things about it is these people, these minorities are being blamed for taking these jobs. And I think it's an important thing to point out, as you did, your jobs aren't being stolen. They're being sold. Right? Your boss is selling your job to someone who will do it cheaper. Obviously it's race playing into it, but it's about what's going to be the cheapest. And, you want to have steady jobs, diverse jobs with, all ethnicities who want to take the job. Then you've got to have a democratically ran workplace that's not searching for profits. And, China, it's very interesting, and you have to laugh, not to cry about it. But the CNN's, how could this horrible thing happen? How could these horrible atrocities hit these Chinese immigrants? And then also trying to pretend like they haven't for the last 2 years been ramping up, the evil China narrative. I mean, that's what's given rise to this predominantly, and they're trying to act like, we had nothing to do with this. This is so sad. Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, and I think actually, look, it's also not so dissimilar here, especially when COVID-19 first came out last year here in Australia. I don't know if it was shown overseas, but we had this one man. He had a stock whip, and he was outside the Chinese consulate here in, I think it might have been Sydney or Canberra, and he was cracking the whip, threatening all these Asian people, the Chinese people, blaming them for the whole COVID-19, the whole lot, and there's just a whole hysteria. Oh, he's dropped out. The whole hysteria.
Keep going. Maybe his
basically it just escalated there, blaming China.
All right, hold up a second. Let me hide you. Put him back. Put you. All right. Sorry about the interruption, folks. David, go ahead.
Yeah. Just continuing on, just the amount of how many Chinese people were even blamed here in this country. There was a lot of discrimination against Chinese students, and it wasn't just Chinese either. Interesting enough, it was people of Vietnamese, Korean, Filipino, Indonesian, Malaysian, Japanese as well. It was even the Asian people overall. The amount of people, threatening them with physical violence and all that, just because as whole COVID-19, and it just really it just went to a very unacceptable level as well. And did the federal government act on this? No, not really. They didn't do swing FA, and they should have had every right to protect these people as well. And stop actually going along with the blatant lies and propaganda. What's coming out of Washington is to blame for us, and actually it was there to cover up that at our own incompetence, our own government's incompetence of trying to deal with this virus. Pardon me.
Yeah, I mean, just a shout out to rural comrades. If you see someone, a coworker, a family member that is re-spouting this racist bullshit, call them out.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a job. You don't want to lose your job. You got to worry about going too far. But there's violence being committed. And even if you know somebody, that person could have the potential to do violence against our neighbors. And it's not okay. You see racism, call it out in your community, call it out in your workplace.
I think that itself leads to a very very nuanced discussion of, like you said, too far of, what's the best way to approach this, and wanting to, because there's certain ways that I think, at least when I in a majority conservative area, have to come at things when start this anti-China stuff or the anti-immigrant, any sort of reactionary. You have to spin it in a way that people will understand. And I think that's something sometimes it's easy to lack, because it's these things we know are, just blatant lies, and it's so easy to let ourselves get so angry that we blow off, and we don't they may stop saying it, but they're not going to stop thinking it. And the important thing is to get this mindset out, which is a hard task, but it can be done, and it has to be done.
I got a little bit of a story. I was talking with, I believe I met him drinking somewhere. I was out west, somewhere around Cincinnati, and I was talking with this guy who was he was very pro-Trump, but he was also very pro-union, because he saw what the union could do. He saw that the union could raise people's wages, and he was also openly racist. He was very racist against black folks. I think he had a union job for a bit, or had a family member that had a union job, and he was very poor himself, and he ran into some issues with the law. And I asked him, well, where's the only person where have you met a black person? And he's like, prison. And I'm like, oh, that's, you're not going to see the best behavior amongst human beings that are kept in a cage, like animals. And his response, well, the black folks, they don't act like us. They don't take care of their families like us. And I straight up told him, you're wrong. Black folks are just like us, trying to get by, just like us, trying to raise their family, trying to get out here and get those better wages. And I think if you break it down to people like that, and we need to spread the culture of solidarity. That's going to take each one, teach one, revolutionary education and practice, which I will preach on over and over and over again. And I really liked Matt Cedillo said something on one of his studies. He's doing a study on capital about we need to get past this platitudes of, power to the people is a great slogan. Get to the masses, get to the people, and that's all good, but we got to break it down in what exactly that means. We got to start getting a contact list, assigning responsibilities. I'm going to talk with this person about this. I'm going to ask this person to maybe do this or come out to this event. I'm going to address this in incorrect behavior, and we need to manage our time, analyze our time, build our abilities to speak better. And this takes work and dedication. In the struggle, as they say, it's the struggle. We struggle against racism. We struggle against the exploitation of the working class. We struggle in solidarity with our oppressed nation brothers and sisters.
Amen to
Any
that.
any further comments, comrades, before we move on?
I don't have anything, David. Go ahead if you do.
No, I think if you hit right on the head there, I mean, unity is paramount. I like the old saying going back late 1800s, the unity of labour is the hope of the world. And I think that's something we carry on to this day. And I think it's vitally important because while there's racism to keep us divided, there's just no way we're able to advance to a higher stage and build to a higher stage to benefit all society.
Right on, brother. Comrade Mansfield, you brought up there was a strike with the Teamsters.
Yes. So for any of you who don't know, the Teamsters are semi-drivers for already unionized businesses, and they have, I believe it was, which Teamsters? I've got it right here. Teamsters Local 120 honored a picket line manned by other Teamsters from Maryland, and they were trying to this company, U.S. Foods, which, if I'm not mistaken, is that a shell company of Amazon?
I'm not sure. I know it's like a food service. I
mean, it's massive.
Drivers.
It's massive, and so U.S. Foods was trying to fire union workers and shift the jobs over to non-union sites. And so basically, the truckers, said, "Go fuck yourself. We're not hauling for you. If you're going to start firing our union brothers and sisters, then nobody's going to pull your trailers." And that, I think, shows, Dust can speak to this personally. It shows the power of radicalizing truckers, because, America would stop turning if truckers stopped driving.
Right on, brother. I guess I can speak to that a little bit. I remember just first starting. I started at one of them big starter companies. Well, I'll go ahead and mention I started at U.S. Express. I no longer work for them, so they can't really tie it to me. It's one of them big trucking companies, training companies. And they pay pretty low wages compared to some of the more, companies that hire people with more experience. And they were actually having, they were contracting out UPS jobs to us. And UPS is a Teamsters stronghold. And, I felt kind of bad. I had bills to pay too. But at the same time, we got to do what we can as working folks with the power that we have. But it really showed that the way they've been trying to destroy the union movement, from contracting out labor to this whole new gig economy stuff. I mentioned this again, like the job I am isn't union, but it got benefits. And I think it's being delivered to convenience stores, and it's being supplanted by these new gig operations like GoPuff, where they deliver convenience store goods directly to your door from Uber style workers who are casual labor with no benefits, with no job security. And I think California recently it was on the ballot. I don't know what it's called, a referendum where people could vote to say whether, basically there was a vote to give workers labor protection. It was to give gig workers labor protection. And there was a massive campaign of lies to convince people to stop this bill that would have helped the good workers. And masses of people voted against their class interest and stopped basic labor rights from this changing economy. And Uber and all these companies have so much money and are so powerful, and the amount of control they have over public opinion and the media is absolutely disgusting. I think it goes right back again to my main point and my discussion and what we're doing right here. We need to talk to our neighbors and coworkers. It ain't they got the money, but we got the numbers. That's actually a lyric from the Doors, but I ain't gotta get into that. Solidarity from Jim Morris. No, I'm just saying.
Critical support for the comrades in the Doors.
Bunch of damn drug addicts. Anyways, but basically, it's up to us, the masses of us. You as an individual, who can you talk to? Who can you influence? And that person influences all the people. This is how we sway popular policy. Through talking with our neighbors and those people, and the butterfly effect of the working class forming its own culture of solidarity and understanding.
Exactly.
Comrade Fox, anything to add on this the Teamsters strike?
Well, no, it's interesting. I bet, but what they're actually fighting for is not so dissimilar for workers all around the world, here in Australia, for example. And it's good to know this because what's happening in the US and elsewhere, because there's a lot of things are pretty much happening here as well. It doesn't have to be just in the transport sector. It could be logistics, and it could be also something else in another sector as well, where workers are trying to establish some form of job security, which is vitally important for all of us at work. We want some form of security so we can actually have some reasonable, comfortable life. We're knowing, oh, well, that we don't have to worry about when the next paycheck's coming from, or how we're going to pay off our house, or how we're going to pay the utility bills, etc., or pay the registration on the vehicle, which nothing seems to be, none of these prices are going down. And what I've noticed is a pattern right around the whole world, where just a simple wages conditions, wages are not going up, they're going down. And even if it's just tiny little increases in the long term, they're pretty much wages are going to be behind the poverty line or below the poverty line. And $500 now might keep you here, but in 3 years or 4 years' time, you'll be down here with the same amount of money. It's basically, and when you can see this all happen around the world, where the pursuit of further greater and greater and greater profits is coming to such a head that something's just going to explode from this, because the system can't sustain this. And the old saying is, I had a discussion here some while back where someone described me the GFC, why you say it was a crisis of overproduction, because that's primarily what happened. The more that was being produced, the more profit was made, more had been produced, but less, and workers are less and less able to afford to live anymore. And we're seeing this again and again. And I think with COVID-19 certainly exposed it, but I think further down, any economic crisis is just going to become a lot more intensified, because it's not going to be like the last one, the one before that. It's going to be further and further people are pushed into poverty and destitution. I'm hearing, I'm seeing what's happened in the US, people losing their homes. They have to live in their cars. Some are living a nomadic lifestyle now. And we're seeing the same thing here in Australia. No doubt it will be happening in Europe and UK, but anywhere else that was developed. But we're just getting pushed down further and further. So the whole thing, what I'm looking at, what's happening with Amazon, everything else, it's all the workers are trying to generate a whole job security issues, not just a wage rise, but to secure so they can have a comfortable life, some basic bread and butter issues. And I think actually be good for all of us. Maybe all those are watching these shows or watch these shows in the future. This is where it's important. Let's start with the bread and butter, and then we can work from there.
Right on. Comrade Fox, did you have any news items prepared?
Yeah, well, I've actually flying from that, because I won't mention the company at the moment because it's some delicate situation. I don't want to actually get myself or you guys into trouble. We've been in negotiations for a new agreement on site now for the last 2 months. The company itself has only offered 1.7% increase, which is really nothing when you think about it long term, because supposingly, if this will happen, we're supposed to get a 0.5 increase in everyone's superannuation by the middle of the year. That's a government legislation. And so they want us to everyone to forego a pay rise. And this company's not the only one. There's many others are doing it because we're getting an increase in super. Now, superannuation is our retirement nest egg. Basically, pensions is basically that's what you've got. And it's supposed to increase up to 12% eventually. But there's been caps on it for all these years. And obviously, you want to have some sort of nest egg to have a comfortable retirement. But what these companies are now using, we can forego any pay rise because you're getting an increase because it's a cost to us. And I'd just like to actually point out how the bosses like to use the term cost to workers, cost and all that. Well, I'd like to actually turn it around. What's actually costing everyone's profit? No one's talking about, well, if you want us to not have a pay increase, you're not to increase your profit margin. If you want to have a pay decrease, well, you drop the prices down by dropping your profit margins. How would you like that? It's simple, but none of that discussion. It was all about us trying to actually just make some little mild improvements in our lives, our working lives. But it's a great cost, and it's all emphasised on that. But and this flows on the previous conversation. We should be actually challenging these super mega profits that are being made now. Well, hang on, all this has been created now. There's no way. It's time for you to give back, and then we should be challenged. We should be challenged that whole system. So I think it's vitally important. This could be taken up. We can start from the bread and butter, and then we can take that up to the higher level. So that's quite important. But they're looking to now. We've got endorsement to now lodge for a protected industrial action. I'll keep you further posted on that, how that pans out as well. But obviously, it comes back down to it. The bosses ain't going to give you anything unless you're prepared to fight for it, really, and you've got to stand solid for that as well. So that certainly is one of the big issue there. It's going to be escalating a lot more, especially after all this COVID-19.
Right on, comrade. I wanted to make a personal shout out to a good comrade, local comrade in my state, local organizer for the Green Party, brother Tony Nudge. Actually personally invited me to come out to a demonstration today in solidarity. I believe there was a day of action in solidarity with the Amazon workers. I was unable to go because of prior commitments. But I think it's very positive. My local when is the local Democrat Party representative invited me personally to come out and support Amazon workers? No, it was the local Green Party organizer who invited me to come out in solidarity. I believe there was demonstrations both in Winston-Salem and in Durham. And this is an important issue. And this is within the Black Belt South. And the amount of spying they're paying. I mean, we raised before, they're paying like just an individual so-called consultants $10,000 a day to try to convince people to vote against their own interests, to vote against having a union. And this absolutely necessary workers coming together and showing solidarity with this few thousand workers down in Alabama is absolutely important and wonderful. And I encourage everyone to get involved in those solidarity struggles.
Well, Das, I believe it's in, it was either today or yesterday, Chicago had a day of action. And our party, the Illinois club, I believe, showed up in basically full force in support.
What party is that, comrade?
I'm glad you asked. Party of Communists USA.
Right, go ahead.
We're carrying on the old line and the goal of CPUSA, and it's our mission to really build a base with people, with workers, and begin changing, as you said, the culture, and to build sort of community power, community solidarity before any sort of serious action, if you follow what I'm saying. And I mean, we've proudly been able to come in the fore, to make ourselves known, especially to liberals and Republicans, often more so. We're finding that going to Republicans, you can use this sort of anti-establishment sentiment that's already there in the Republican Party, and tweaking the reactionary social views. You can build a lot of strength there. I mean, this is completely unrelated to anything to politics, but which of the two demographics is more armed? Is it Republicans or is it liberals? I mean, which one would you want to have on your side? And I think we all know the answer to that.
Hmm. That's interesting, comrade. I'm working working with some of our urban brothers and sisters, have to defend themselves as well, but I get what you're saying, brother. Definitely, Mark said we should disarm the proletariat. Never. We should never disarm the proletariat. That's a good paraphrase. All right, man. Anybody got any further news items to add before we move on to the interview section?
Yep.
Comrade Fox.
Just got one more. Just recently, just this week in the federal parliament, some industrial relation bills was actually withdrawn by the federal government, but they kept one or two points that are pretty bad, mainly for casual workers. They basically, what happened in the Senate, we had a crossbench, a mixed match of independents and other parties. They wanted to make amendments to the legislation. Supposedly, the federal government just said, "No, we're withdrawing it." But they did get some support on casual legislation, which all the conditions that we've won over the last few years for casuals, for casual work, which is quite precarious type of employment. They're not entitled to sick leave, annual leave, you name it. They do get a loading to try and compensate, but it's really being a long-term casual. It's not. Basically, what happens? This guarantees the longevity of casualisation of the workforce. So an employer who might have a large workplace, be it a mine or a factory, whatever, has with 300, 400 people working in it, he can keep them all as casual as long as they want. And because in the past we've actually had casual conversion for our very industrial agreements and other instruments, and this allowed them, like, after 6 months continual employment, it gives you greater ability to go full time. Which, but now this will then give the employers guarantee to keep a precarious employment institutionalised in such a way that it'd be harder for them to go full time. Now, and trying to unionise it will also be harder, because those who do want to generally trying to have it unionised will know full well, if they found out, they only just have to be told, "Look, sorry, there's no work for you. You're no longer required," and they have an hour's notice, and they've lost their job. So it certainly it just comes to show you they when they were talking about this whole thing of rebuilding the economy, that we're going to look after you. They don't care about you. They just don't care about workers at all. So it comes to show you, it's not our system. Never has been and never will be. And this just gives you another example of attacks on workers here. And no doubt this is just in line of a lot of attacks on workers around the world. I mean, in line with work.
Right. I got to respond, man. I cannot emphasize enough. If you were involved in a union, you were involved in negotiations. Mm-hmm. You need to look out for incoming workers. Do not allow them to sell short the incoming workforce, because you're selling short your own future and the future of the working class.
Yeah,
that's right.
I agree. I mean, it means Chicago is, in many ways, I mean, it is a bastion of union labor, and there was an attempt to make Illinois a right-to-work state. And I tell you what, for as much as I hate cities, Chicago came to the rescue on this one, and they beat the ever-living hell out of capitalists when they wanted to make Illinois a right-to-work state.
Right on, man. All right, I guess if there's no other news items, we'll move on to the interview portion. I would just like to give a sincere thank you for being with us today, Comrade Mansfield. His video cut out. Are you still there, brother? Well, we're going to have an interview portion, that rural internet. That's how it is. We definitely need a good demand of the people is to nationalize the telecommunication industry and put fiber optic cables all throughout the rural communities to the south and through the heartland, and give equality in the access to information, especially with the way things are going. People are starting to work from home with the COVID, Zoom, has expanded. The company Zoom meetings, working from home, education from home. And they did this in a pinch in the COVID crisis. But these are going to be more and more permanent parts of both educational and working life. So if we want rural comrades need to have access to telecommunications. Comrade Fox?
Well, that's actually communication is vitally important for all of us, and those access especially in rural and regional areas here in Australia too. The access to the internet is still not up; it's still quite substandard. We've had the national broadband network rolled out for like the last 10 years now, and it hasn't been up to standard where it should have been. And it's been deliberately sabotaged too by the bourgeoisie of this respective country and other telecommunications sectors as well. But yeah, especially if you ever visited Australia and in some of the remote regional areas, you can hardly get a phone signal at times as well, and especially if you need it for emergency services or other particular type of essential services, it makes it very harder as well. And I think you're absolutely right. We should be entitled to having that free access to it, and a really good quality communication system. It's called many names in different companies, but we'll just call it web services. Just an example, I could be having a discussion with you now and everything could just drop out all of a sudden because I've got a poor network, or everyone's onto it all of a sudden. We actually worked that out during the COVID-19, not worked it out, but what we discovered during COVID-19, a lot of kids had to do schooling from home. So what happens if I'm trying to organise a Zoom-in meeting with some members and a company, be it negotiations or with some members because I couldn't get there because of certain restrictions. All of a sudden, all these kids are doing online learning, but it's log jamming the whole system. And not on top of that, you've got everyone else that's on the system trying to have meetings and etc. So we get this whole log jam and we couldn't get anywhere. And it was really frustrating to try and deal with things as well. But even just for general personal things, if we want to communicate with someone have a general talk, it could be quite frustrating as well. We've got no way to talk to. But they're going to be using it in such a way where you use a pay system, using it in such a way to have a stop. Oops, I can hear some static. What they're trying to do is deprive us of any communicating around the world. Because one thing I discovered, sorry, not learned, but what I've discovered out of all this, it's been great how we're communicating. Asked me 2 years ago, would I be even thinking about doing this? Probably not. But now here we are meeting other new people, and I know the capitalists are worried. They are worried when we start communicating like this.
Right on. I mean, I got a few of while we're still talking. I just got a text from Comrade Keaton. He said he's back on shortly. There he is.
Come back.
There we go. Let me hide you for a minute there. Show him. Boom, boom, boom. Everything's back up and running. Thanks for coming back with us. Can you hear us?
I can. The NSA works hard, but Jesus works harder.
I just had a point. We're going to go ahead and wrap up on that demand for nationalized telecommunications and investment in internet in rural areas. Capitalism, neoliberal capitalism in particular. I mean, you can have nationalized telecommunications under capitalism. But what we're seeing is an even further decay of capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, where not even the utilities are nationalized or controlled by the local governments. One of the best institutions we still have left in the United States that the neoliberals are trying to privatize the hell out of is the post office. And the post office was the flow of information before the internet. And the post office has something called universal service, which basically for the same 40 cents, I don't know how much it is, 25, 30, 40 cents now, you can send a letter to California or Alaska or Maine for the same post. It don't matter if it's a rural area. That means a post office worker is going to have to go out 10 miles up to this tribe in Alaska for the same 40 cents as it would to send it down the street. And I think we need to make the demand for universal service. that means the same cost of internet in a rural area as it does in an urban area. But solidarity with our brothers and sisters at the post office, a strong unionized workplace that the privatizers have been trying to attack and destroy for a long time of both parties. Sorry, we got into a discussion. I just had to end it. Anything to add, Comrade Mansfield?
Yeah, I tell you what, I'd like to have nationalized internet. It does, and it this happened last time and the time before that. The NSA is trying to get me.
Man, I ain't about. I'm not big on conspiracy theories unless it's proven to me. There we go. We got David Fox going off now. We do have issues with rural internet and the crumbling infrastructure in the United States, and apparently, new technologies. Comrade Fox, are you with us? Okay, well, I still got Comrade Mansfield. We're having a plethora of technical difficulties this evening. So we'll go into the interview section. I just want to thank you, thank you to Keaton Mansfield from being with us. Very strong organizer, young comrade, fluent in Marxist-Leninism. Absolutely wonderful to have you with us. And I believe I've had you on at least twice.
Mm-hmm.
One for my interview series for Anti-Imperialist America, where I one-on-one interview a lot of people. I've had you once on before as a guest host of Working Class Revolt, the show I do with Comrade David Fox. And good news. I asked earlier if Keaton Mansfield wanted to be a permanent co-host. So you'll be seeing Keaton Mansfield for a while. You can go back and look at those previous interviews for a little bit of Keaton's background, but maybe we'll just do it. Maybe a sentence or two about who you are and where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, I'm Keaton Mansfield. I'm a member of the Party of Communist USA. I'm the son of a seventh generation farmer, there's really not much to me. Really, in all honesty, what I care about is getting the people in my community out of poverty, and the only way to do that's going to be socialism, and that's what it comes down to me. That's what it comes down to for me is just really concern for my neighbors, the people I'm around, seeing them suffer. Well, how do we fix that? Obviously, we know the answer.
Man of my own heart. I mean, I told you, I've said my story several times. At one time there was 8 of us living in a 2-bedroom trailer down a mile-long dirt road. And, I suffered. I saw people around me suffer, and I'm tired of it. I want to do something. I've dedicated a big portion of my life. I've been part of Occupy. That's showing my age for for a minute. It was all over the country. But man, it's good to see folks, the next generation of folks coming up, and glad to have you here. You mentioned that you're doing some good work. You've accomplished some things in the last few weeks. Maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we're working on getting to farmers, and obviously, I have a very personal invested interest with that. And I found out it'd be a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, that my great granddaddy, he is basically God light on my mother's side of the family. I mean, he is the man that everyone in the family tries to, or at least says they try to aspire to be. And I just found out that he was a member of the National Farmers Organization in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And if you don't know what that is, it's very similar to a labor union, except it's for farmers, and it's more of trying to build cooperative farming within rural areas to combat, Monsanto, not the bear, these massive businesses, Pfizer, et cetera, et cetera. And what they do is all the farmers in an area will basically agree to not sell a certain commodity, which will cause the market to go up, and then they'll all sell at the same time, so they get as much as they can from the commodity. The price of the commodity after they sell all at once, they rush the market, plummets, and then the consumer is able to buy very, very cheap. And so what I found out my great grandfather did was he would go around to different farms as basically, Lord, excuse me, as an auditor, and make sure that farmers weren't breaking the union agreement. And I found that out, and just absolutely boosted my respect and love for the man. I mean, he came from a very, very poor family. His mother was a sex worker. He was one of 9 children. It looks like we got David back.
Yeah, back. Sorry about that.
Right.
Yeah, just dropped out.
Welcome back, David. You can go ahead and continue.
And so, I mean, he came from a very, very dirt poor family. And obviously, as a farmer, technically within the bourgeois, the capitalist class. But, there's an interesting thing with farmers. While many of us own the land, I mean, we're also working 12, 13-hour, 14, 15-hour days to plant and harvest. And we're getting very, very little. So it's an interesting situation with farmers and how we look at that. And so we've been building organizations to be able to reach out to farmers and work with them and kind of bring them into the fold of left-wing politics, of a future, right? Our motto is peace, farms, and family.
Right on, brother. Man, I mean, as we see the empire decay, we have the shrinking of the labor aristocracy. We have the development of the opioid crisis in rural communities. We're going to have more and more chance of solidarity, more and more chance of linking up rural workers with urban workers, all workers with internal colonies and oppressed nations, and solidarity with the larger global anti-imperialist movement. I wanted to address a comment here from Comrade Reese, I thought, who made a very good comment. Building up the anti-imperialist movement is the first priority. Socialism is the only way to solve the problem of poverty. And I think this is a very important question. And the way I see it, my understanding of Lenin, imperialism, the final stage of capitalism, is that imperialism is capitalism. So when the farmer is exploited, the farmer is being exploited by the imperialists. There is no differentiating between the exploitations of the workers in the imperialist core and the exploitation of the oppressed nations and the people of the global South.
Absolutely.
And what any response to that? Those concepts?
Yeah, let's put it into real terms, right? What's some imperialism we were talking about earlier? China, right? The trade war, blatant act of attempted imperialism, and I mean, look who got hurt the most by the trade war. It was farmers, right? There it is in real time, real world situations, and that's why peace is the first thing, right? We got to stop imperialism. The Korean War devastated American farmers. We couldn't keep up with the demands. Markets went to hell in a handbasket, and it can easily come off as more concerned about the material conditions of ourselves in the U.S. than the lives of those in the global South. But I think that's a massive reduction. I think it's a both and, not an either or. You want to get farmers on board. You want to explain these things to farmers, to rural people, coming out of the gate talking about imperialism against the national bourgeois of the colonized third or colonized global south, it's gonna be meaningless. But when you talk about how imperialism hurts a person you're talking to directly, I think it brings it back into focus. It makes it a real pressing concern, not just the kind of people over there mentality. And I think that's a very, very important thing for us to do and how to approach it.
I just want to give a shout out to Comrade Reese. We actually had Comrade Reese on our show. If people want to go back and watch that, and people should subscribe to his YouTube channel. He recently did a very good class analysis on the monarchy. It's a UK comrade with his whole Oprah interviewing him, the billionaires, and talking about how hard it is with royalty and that old crap. And Comrade Reese had a very good class analysis of royalty. People should subscribe to his channel. And we're very glad to have his participation. Comrade Fox, do you have any questions for our guest?
Well, Captain, I do apologise about that. I was talking about internet before, lo and behold, failed on me there for about 5 minutes or so. Well, obviously, we're just I think what the conversation was talking about imperialism's effect on agriculture. Would that be fair to say? Well, probably the question I'd have, you find with a lot of farms and that with their because, for example, here in Australia, a lot of our wheat's an export market. And especially to China. Of course, this trade war there, we've trying to put a massive tariff on our wheat. Well, no, it wasn't just wheat, there's actually all sorts of grains. Did you find that was any similar to the US? I don't know if China's actually a major export market for you guys as well.
I think, and I could be wrong, I think the US was up in either the top 5, maybe even the number 1 import for soy in China, right? We exported the most soybeans to China, and my dad specifically went from being fairly supportive of Trump to the next morning reading the headline of trade war and then getting the market report and finding out that all the soybeans planted 2 years ago, I guess we planted nearly 1,300 acres of soybeans. I mean, that's about 75% of our crops, and only to find out we can't sell it to anybody was devastating.
Yeah. And what you find too is, and we found this, it's not just on the devastating for the farmer, but also on the communities, the rural communities that depend on the industries. But we found that also the unemployment increase. There were people who had to leave and look elsewhere for work because it just wasn't there. I mean, they were still harvesting, but once that was it. Where do we go from there? And it was just like, pretty much those rural workers were just left directionless. So I don't know if that happened in the US as well, but I presume it would.
We've, rural communities rely on the family farms to keep any sort of economy going. The town over from me used to be a massively booming railroad town. And that's all gone, and the only thing left are farmers. And when farms are suffering, well, then our communities around us suffer as well, which on both an economic and even a social level, I mean, is devastating. You see people you meet on the street, knowing that, well, do they know if their next paycheck's coming? And it's I think it's as much a social issue as it is economic.
Yep.
I asked this question before. Maybe I can get a little bit more in-depth answer on it. I mean, I'm from North Carolina, and there's a lot of big corporate farms. A few local ones, but a lot of big corporate farms, and even the local farms rely heavily on immigrant labor. So I have a question: is there more corporate farms, and is there a large presence of immigrant labor, and how do we build solidarity between farmers and immigrant workers?
So I guess I'll address the first one first. Yes. As of last week, Illinois now has either of you take a guess at who is the number one landowner in the state of Illinois.
Not sure. Go ahead.
Bill fucking Gates.
What the fuck?
Bill Gates owns more farmland than everyone else in Illinois combined.
Holy shit.
Yeah. People were not happy about that when that hit the news, and my some of the family who's a little bit more liberal was like, oh, well, Bill Gates can help young people get into farming. It's like, that's just recreating the feudal system. It's I can't even express the hatred for that man. I mean, he's never worked a day in his life, and now he owns more farms than the rest of us. It's absolute nonsense. And there's definitely a huge migrant labor force, even in Illinois.
That news in my
Pardon?
Go ahead, Comrade Fox. Make sure the volume's down. Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay. There's like I mentioned earlier, there's a town north of us that has huge minority workforce. There's actually the company I've spoken about, the industrial hog plant in my town, does this very, very imperialist thing of they'll ship people over from South Africa. They'll give them a house and a really shitty wage. They'll work them farming season, and they send them back to South Africa. And I mean, it just blew my mind. I mean, they're importing foreign labor, using it, and then sending them back with very, very little.
So what are ways we can build solidarity with between farmers and immigrant workers?
That's a difficult question, because there's racism, xenophobia is so deeply ingrained, especially easily within rural areas, and there's a lot of ways actually that I've approached that, and some of them are extremely unconventional. I've got one of my very, very close friends has very reactionary stances, especially on Mexicans, and he's a Irish descendant as well, just like me. And so when I talked to him about it, I started talking about how Irish immigrants fought on the St. Patrick Battalion. I've got St. Patrick's icon right there. Fought with Mexicans during the American-Mexican War, and about how what are you doing? You're being you're being a very disgusting person in this. You're betraying your own ancestral roots. And that last part I know struck a chord, because that's a very big part of rural culture is this sort of respect to ancestry. And obviously he had no idea that Ireland sent volunteers to help Mexico defend itself. But as he began to learn about it, I'm beginning to notice a shift in how he sees this, and of more a kind of maybe my great grandfather fought along this Mexican worker's great grandfather, and it's beautiful. It's strange, but for me at least, it's a very beautiful way of reaching people, and it's obviously not going to apply to every situation. And I absolutely don't have the answer to that. That's a difficult question. All I can speak about is personal experience, and that's pointing out interests. You call it out, right? Somebody says something reactionary, be like, hey, watch your fucking mouth. They're people too. And that's sometimes the only way to go about it. So it depends situation to situation. Overall, the only thing I can tell you is know how to read the person, because you want to change the mentality more than anything else.
Right on. There's a lot of beautiful sentiments raised there. We're actually just coming off of St. Patrick's Day. I think on my last live, I actually sang the first verse of David Rovick's St. Patrick's Battalion, and that is a very beautiful history. If people are not aware of that, recent Irish immigrants were sent down to be cannon fodder against the Mexican people, not in the Mexican-American War, but in the Yankee War of Aggression. That's that they call it the Mexican-American War, but man, I'm going to call it for U.S. aggression against Mexico. And when you say Mexican-American War, it's like, I mean, this is what we're taught in schools. That's the official name for it. It sounds like, oh, there was two parties that had a fight. Nah, the U.S. just basically invaded and stole their territory.
Yep.
But basically, recent immigrants exploited themselves, leaving famine in Ireland, coming to the United States, going to war against Mexico, and then seeing the carnage and the chaos and the murder and switching sides and joining the Mexican people and serving under the Mexican state to fight against U.S. imperialism. And
Well,
go ahead.
Even on that touching first, I don't know if you know, St. Patrick's Day is my birthday, so I have a
What?
special love for that.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And one of the big things, and I know that it's the common sentiment within the left, is this hatred for religion, especially Catholicism. That ended up being one of the deciding factors of that sense of solidarity, because these, basically 99% Catholic Irish immigrants were coming over, and they're seeing the American army rape nuns. And it's like, what the fuck is this? I've got a responsibility to God. These people, the Mexicans are the oppressed are my friends. They're my allies. And that played such a huge factor. And I mean, the flag behind me, this is the flag of the St. Patrick's Battalion that was used in solidarity in the War of Yankee Aggression, as well as Comrade said, to kill a bunch of fucking Confederates.
Right on, brother. Let's say, where I was going with that. There was a recent comment made here by Comrade Reese I wanted to pull up, and I actually have a tweet or a Facebook share. Here we go. Let's see. Comrade Reese. Though they may be backward views, world workers are on our side. The best way we can enlighten them is helping them recognize their self-interest and fighting for the interests of the proletariat.
Yeah.
That's a very true statement, and I really like the way the comrade summed it up. And everybody knows one of my major influences is the Black Agenda Report. In particular, Ajamu Baraka, former vice presidential candidate of the Green Party and an activist with Black Alliance for Peace. A year ago to this day, he made a statement on Facebook that I wanted to read to people. Sorry, but I am a revolutionary, so I will not join in the vitriol directed at the people who are subject to the most sophisticated and comprehensive ideological condition of any population on the planet. Yes, the U.S. public in general is the most ill-informed and unsophisticated on the planet. And yes, there is venile, petty bourgeois class of opportunist buffers who sheepdog the people into the system. But all of this just reflects the extent of the work that has to be done. Drop the pessimism and build something. If you're not building something, support those who are. Send money to Black Agenda Report. Black Alliance for Peace. I know I made a fundraising campaign for Black Alliance for Peace, but I think he made a very prophetic statement there about the absolute propaganda machine that is used against workers in the imperialist core. And Australia as well. Rupert Murdoch in Australia. I believe newspaper companies, local newspaper companies are owned, and local television companies are owned by like the same one or two companies.
That's right.
And this is what we're having to deal with. And we don't have the same money. We don't have the same infrastructure. But it's about damn time we started building our own infrastructure so we can get the truth of the proletariat out there to the masses.
Well, Dust, you'll probably like that. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. There's an organization called the National Black Farmers Alliance. And,
okay.
And I was looking on their website, beginning to get in contact with them. Apparently, in 1980, I believe, 1 in 7 farmers in the U.S. was black. It is now 1 in maybe 48, I think. It's even, I mean, it's the racism of the capitalist system is seeping through everywhere. And, I had no idea about this. Obviously 1 in 7 is still disproportional, but it's a hell of a lot better than 1 in 48.
That's huge. That is huge.
Well, shit. Let's see. I think I'll respond to that. I mean, there's a lot of good, decent documentaries about how black farmers were denied government loans, historically and systemically. The story of the Afro-American people is an oppressed nation who have been kept out of even earning the wages that white workers were allowed, which keeps the wages of everyone down. If we want to raise wages, we have to raise wages and rights of all people. Undocumented brothers and sisters need full legal rights. And we need to stick up for black farmers and stop these backward racial local officials from denying them the government loans that everyone else is entitled to.
Amen.
Comrade Fox, if you wanted to speak on that as well as the media control in Australia.
Certainly talk about the media control. The fact is, but for those of you who are watching this, to make you aware, over 70% of our media is controlled by Murdoch. This is our printed press. We have Foxtel and Sky News, which is equivalent to your Fox News in the US, and just as equally horrible, if not even worse. They're just bastions of toxic right-wing ideology as well. And basically, there is just no actual genuine investigative journalism in that papers. I mean, the one where the Murdoch paper we have here in Victoria called the Herald Sun, most appropriately called the Herald Scum. It is just gutter trash journalism. Well, I won't say. I'll remove the term journalism. It's just gutter trash. That's and it's not so dissimilar around the world. It's also basically it mainly supports one political party over the other. Notably here in Australia, the Liberal National Coalition, and then over the Labor Party, obviously, and basically how powerful Murdoch has become. He basically has got the one-way telephone communication to the Prime Minister's office or into any senior politician, basically dictating policy in terms. Well, a classic example was the classic fight between Silicon Valley and the mainstream media led by Murdoch. Just recently, when Facebook notoriously disallowed, banned any news content here in Australia for about 2 weeks. Which actually really involved the people who suffered the most were working class people that couldn't access news by any forms of social media, probably Twitter still, but Google was threatening to close down services as well. There's obviously been some sort of compromise deal, but Murdoch's papers, all his profit margin has dropped in Australia significantly, so he was just trying to make a quick cash back. But it just demonstrated once again the power these people have. Either Silicon Valley's got this power that could just close you down like that without any proper recourse, without any proper way of dealing with it. Was an issue about a particular postal information could be dealt with. They just shut it down completely. Where on the other hand, you got the mainstream media just how powerful they've become. Instead of being a genuine news service to actually give us proper information about that, it's just a propaganda machine for big business, and that's basically what it's come down to at the end of the day. And some really horrible propaganda as well.
Comrade Mansfield, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Well, that can be. We've got a few things, but I'll run them by you for maybe the next time. that I'm on here with you guys. But I guess really all I have to say then is fuck Rupert Murdoch, fuck the Daily Mail, and fuck the Daily Wire.
Can we include the Daily Telegraph, the Courier Mail, the Herald Scum, the Australian, the Advertiser, the NT News as well, please, and I think it was the Tasmania. I think they got the Mercury. That's right. It's called.
All right, let me revise that. Fuck everything David just said.
That's right.
Man, you forgot, man. NSNBC, NPR, Democracy Now. When they start talking about China, all that, all that shit.
All the
we need our own
news sources. You know what to do. As Frank Zappa correctly said, "Go fuck yourselves."
I was going to bring something up. I just forgot. Oh yeah. We might if there's nothing else to add, I guess we'll end the interview portion and we'll go on to our workshop. Is that okay with comrades?
Yeah, certainly. All
right. So it's my turn to grill David Fox over there. I had a coworker. Not a coworker. I had a comrade that actually said this to me. I had a contact actually tell me this, and he's like, "Man, I'm tired of work. I come home. I work this long shift. I ain't got time to do the study. I ain't got time to listen to podcasts. You know, I barely got time to listen to podcasts, but I ain't got time to do my own study and develop. The best I can do is watch YouTube videos of academics like Richard Wolff. Isn't that enough? Why do I need to study Marxist theory? Why do I need to get involved in my own understanding? Can I just depend on academics who to inform me of these issues?
No, we can't just depend on academics. Surely they might be able to explain a few things, but they actually don't offer any practical solution. You see, understand, Marxism is not a dogma. It's not like any particular religion or it's a toolbox. It's a guide to action. It's not a dogma. And obviously, we read it to understand it. Academics play a role to try and interpret. Some of Marx, classic examples, Marx's 3 volumes of Capital, which we quite an intensive read. And sometimes you need to have those people to break it down to make it easier for your common working class and poor people to understand. But the role they play is very, very limited. They do not come up with a solution on a way forward. That's a class solution. That's a collective working class solution that we need to actually put our own collective heads together and come up with our own collective decision making to develop a strategy for the way forward. And look, I know you mentioned Richard Wolff before. Yes, he's good at breaking down some things and explaining things, but he's not very good on actually, and this is no fault of his own because he's not connected to the working class. So he's disassociated from it. He's an academic. So what you will find there, he won't be able to actually provide a proper solution or a strategy for the way forward. And that comes to our primary responsibility, I think. And it's vitally important. Why? Because we need to get control of it. Don't allow another section or group to have the control of our strategy all the way forward. Well, I've seen that happen before, and it gets nowhere. It actually it helps us to empower ourselves further and develop our own leaderships, our own leaders, develops our own practical activities, so we'll be able to share it with further wide amongst working class and poor folk.
Comrade Mansfield, in return.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what came to my mind is the importance of getting yourself affiliated with an organization. Our party, PCUSA, hosts every week a nearly 2-hour study session that comrades attend, study and learn from each other. And it's great to learn from other people, right? It's great to listen to those who know more than you. That's thanks to YouTube and podcasts. I mean, that's how I familiarize myself with socialism. But you also have to read and study on your own as much as possible because, one, these figures on YouTube can make mistakes, intentionally or unintentionally, and you need to make sure that you have yourself grounded in what's actually being said, so you aren't led astray by how would Lenin put this? Philistine bastardizations of Marx. And I think it's a balance of both. It's great to have all the media we do and to have these resources, but you need to make sure that you have the core foundation, because you got to have the groundwork, or everything else will just collapse around it.
That's right. Just further, I add too. I mean, yes, we need to do our own study, and it's good to join an organisation or even a study group. I mean, it's been also Centre of Political Innovation, which is now up and running in the US. So fantastic. And this book, I recommended as well, by Caleb Morpin, and it's good study. We've been reading through that as well. And the fact is, it helps us develop. But the thing is, the reason why it's important we do our own study, it needs to be actually connected to our own practice. Theory and practice are not separate from each other, and that's what Richard Wolff does. He sort of separates the theory from the practice, and this is where you wind up with a dead end if you try to follow him, where we link it up with our practice. And I mean, we're obviously going to make mistakes, make our errors, but that's where we learn. That's how we learn. As Chairman Mao once said, the best lessons learned are the hard ones. They went through some very hard lessons to learn to get where they had to go. But this is where it is. The old saying, theory without practice is sterile, practice without theory is futile. And that's why the two go together, and that's vitally important. So I'm not going to totally dismiss any of the academics. Some can actually play a good role, but they're only limited to what their ability to do. It's up to us working class people to actually get control of the matter.
Right. I just want to make a quick announcement. Last week, with Comrade Red Scare, we did a study of the We Are City Builders, and we did The Malady by Olgan. It's in the works. It's tentatively planning at this point for the 3rd. On the 27th, I'm going to be emceeing the monthly Center for Political Innovation conference on the 27th. And then on the 3rd, when Working Class Revolt meets again, we're going to be having a study meeting. That is the new format. I know we're bringing on Keaton. Okay, Keaton, I just told you. I guess we're telling you live. Every week we change the format. Every week we do. Every other week, 1 week is a work meeting where we have labor updates and news updates, and then the other week we're going to have study sessions. And we started studying We Are City Builders. Last week we did Olgan. And then tentatively on the 3rd, we're going to try to have Caleb Maupin on the program, and we're going to try to read aloud and study Einstein's Why Socialism.
Awesome.
And David Fox will be unavailable that week, so it should be me, Caleb Maupin, and Keaton Mansfield on the 3rd. So if people want to mark their calendars, and hopefully shooting for 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good announcement about that. And we were going to continue. If people want to get this book, we're going to continue to study different sections of We Are City Builders for the foreseeable future. As far as go ahead.
Just for all the Australian comrades here, remember those of us who live in Victoria, New South Wales, and South Australia, ACT, and Tasmania. Daylight savings ends on the 4th, or midnight on the 3rd and 4th, so we'll be back to 10 o'clock in the morning our time. So we'll be back to that 14-hour time difference, which will make communicating with the US a hell of a lot easier than trying to work out a 16-hour time difference.
Right. So as far as responding to why can't we depend on academics like Richard Wolff to inform us about Marxism, why we need to actually study ourselves and grapple with this material, is the academics do not have the lived life experience that we have. There's a great Maoist saying, from the masses to the masses. Your understanding and lived experience as a worker is valuable, and it is necessary for the movement. Now, I had, you can talk about the Cultural Revolution, where, there was a lot of beautiful things that happened in the Cultural Revolution. There was workers who talked about how they're going to run society and how they're going to run the workplace. But maybe sitting in a field all day, instead of actually farming, at the time wasn't such a good idea in some cases within the Cultural Revolution. But there's a balance. There's a balance between working, providing for your family, and also dedicating a portion of your labor to the cause and the understanding of socialism in the world to make the world a better place. And you are needed. You are needed. I need you to do study groups. I need you to talk to your neighbors. I need you to make a contact list and try to get other workers. We are the revolution. We are the way forward. No academic, even academics can be helpful, and we can use the work they have. We can analyze their work as well. But we are the way forward, and we need to have study groups. And we got to go back, and we can't depend on petty bourgeois academics to teach us the new forms of Marxism. We have to go back to the classics ourselves. Foundations of Leninism. Stalin, which led the Third International, the world movement for workers and oppressed nations was led by Comrade Stalin. We go directly to the stores and read Comrade Stalin. Foundations of Leninism. We read Lenin as well as other. We interpret it ourselves and we apply it to the new conditions. We have no need for condescending saviors. Each one teach one. Revolutionary education and practice.
That's right.
Any response?
Amen.
Well, I think that what Wolff said was actually quite correct. I mean, the academics to understand, whose class interests they're serving as well. I mean, there are those that do want to try and intentionally want to serve the working class, and that's great, but they need to be kept in check by the working class. And there's others that will obviously serve the bourgeoisie because that's where it pays them in the first place to discredit Marxism. They want to keep it consistently discredit. They'll write books about very historical revolutionary leaders, about 1,000,001 books about Stalin, for example. I mean, most of them are all really fraudulent anyway, but, there'll be 1,000,001 books about Chairman Mao, for instance, and what I would recommend for those people who are doubtful or want to know about this stuff, read direct to the source itself. Read Stalin's collected works. Read the classic Foundation of Leninism. If you want to really find out about the man, read that stuff. Same with Chairman Mao. Read his classic works. I actually recommend his 4 and 5 essays on philosophy, his little work on contradictions. That's actually some very good classic wording. And even on Lenin, really read stuff on Lenin and Marx, the stuff that they wrote, not just people's own personal opinions and views on them as well, because there's a lot of distorted facts and information out there to deliberately divert us from the course of socialism. But it's vitally important. We need to learn all this ourselves so we practice and become stronger ourselves, because it's not going to be anyone else from the outside that's going to do it for us.
Right on. So I'm going to try to come up with at least one more unprincipled position. Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. If you want to add to the current statement, go ahead.
Just what David said, the importance of reading Stalin is kind of an anecdote, but in my pickup, in the console, I keep Bible and a copy of Foundations of Leninism next to each other. And I think it coincides perfectly, and the last thing I'll end on is, religious or not, James chapter 5, "Go now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as if it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Behold the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord on the Sabbath."
That's right. So
our new
you're not going to heaven. There's the only other place. You're going to be punished.
All right.
Jesus makes it very clear. Hell is just eternal gulag, but with flames.
Yes.
Right on. Our new co-host, Keaton Mansfield. I think that's going to be the last word for the night. I guess we'll go ahead and go into our chant. I don't know. Did we do the chant last time you were on? I don't remember. All right, comrades, just Let me see if there's anything in the comments. Well, we'll just go ahead and end it there. That was great. So just try to repeat after me. Dare to struggle.
Dare
Dare
to
to
struggle.
struggle.
Dare to win.
Dare to win.
Dare to win.
All power to the people.
All power
All
to the
power
people.
All right. Good night, friends.
Thank you.
Take care.
All the best.